I had been driving for hours, the monotonous hum of the road stretching out beneath the tires when I saw the exit sign ahead. It should have been a simple stop, a quick break to rest my eyes and get back on the road. But that was before my old laptop started acting up again. I thought maybe it was time to face the inevitable. My tech was failing, and I needed a plan B. The truck stop was deserted, an eerie silence hanging in the air. Still, it was the perfect place to upload the logs, or so I thought. The plan was simple: connect to the Wi-Fi, upload the mining logs, and move on. But something about that quiet parking lot felt off, as though the stillness was hiding something I couldn't yet see. The minutes ticked by, and it didn't take long before I found myself lost in the task, convinced it would be a quick in and out. I wasn't prepared for what came next. The soft whine of tires approaching broke the silence, and in that moment, everything shifted. The air grew heavier, and I was left with a sinking feeling, not just from the sudden presence behind me, but from the nagging sense that nothing was as it seemed anymore. Before I continue, I owe an apology for the abrupt end to my last post, and for not finishing what I meant to say. Last Sunday should have been nothing more than a quick 5-minute stop, just a brief pit stop, assuming my old laptop didn't decide to fail on me. If it did, I figured I'd be dealing with about 10 minutes of trying to fix it. The deserted truck stop didn't seem like the kind of place where danger lurked, so uploading the mining logs felt worth the risk. When I exited the highway, I told myself I'd give the upload 15 minutes. If it didn't work by then, I'd leave and try again some other time. Either way, this was supposed to be a short trip. I turned off the ignition and pulled the key from the ignition, the rumble of the engine fading into the stillness of the empty parking lot. I scanned the area, checking for any signs of trouble, but there was nothing. A few street lamps flickered overhead, casting weak, yellow light in random bursts, reminding me of the full moon that hung above. Otherwise, everything was calm. Feeling more at ease, I grabbed my laptop and repeated my simple plan to myself. Hack into the closed Starbucks Wi-Fi, upload the logs, then get back on the road. I thought it was foolproof, but of course it didn't go as planned. 5 days later, I still can't figure out how I missed the car coming up behind mine. Maybe I was too tired to notice. Maybe the strange force running through me clouded my senses. Whatever the reason, I didn't realize until it was almost too late. When I finally saw the vehicle creeping up, my heart sank. My body tensed like a coil, ready for whatever was coming. I quickly typed a half-finished sentence, hit post, and slammed the laptop shut. I turned to face the car, but the headlights were blinding, and I couldn't make out who was in the driver's seat. In that moment, I thought I was done for. That all too familiar, suffocating fear set in as I braced for the worst, for the silent end that seemed to stretch out forever. Then, just when I thought the end was near, the lights dimmed and a car door opened. Someone stepped out. My heart almost stopped as my vision adjusted, and I recognized the voice. "Jack, is that you?" It was Camila. I felt a rush of relief flood over me, and I jumped out of the car, desperate to make sure she was all right. "Camila, what happened? Are you okay?" She looked like her old self, intact, alive, as if nothing had changed. I was flooded with a kind of love and relief that left me almost dizzy. She was real, standing there in front of me, and I almost forgot about everything else. But then she spoke again. "Of course I'm fine. Why wouldn't I be? Why did you want to meet here? Are we going home now?" The relief I felt quickly soured, and suddenly the truth hit me like a cold slap in the face. This wasn't right. The sense of comfort I had in her presence faded, replaced by the growing realization that something was terribly wrong. The God thread, Maggie, her transformation. None of it made sense anymore. And then I saw it. The collar of her shirt pulled back to reveal a bare chest. No mark, no port, just smooth skin. This wasn't my Camila. "Camila, where have you been?" I demanded, standing over her. She looked genuinely confused and hurt. As I stared at her, a thought crystallized in my mind. This wasn't the woman I loved, it was something else. "Jesus, what's wrong with you?" She stood up slowly, brushing herself off, and seemed to try reasoning with me. "Well, I was sick earlier today. Had a flare-up, you know. I was resting when Maggie called to see if she could help. I felt better after that, and you asked her to pass the message to me to meet you here. That's why I'm here." Her words were wrong, and they didn't add up. My mind raced. I felt like I was being cornered by something I couldn't understand. The God thread's hold on me, the constant manipulation, how had it led me here? Was Camila with Maggie or against her? I decided to test something to see if this version of her could be controlled the way the real one had. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "I guess I'm just not feeling myself. We can talk more when we get home, okay? I'll follow you." Her smile was warm and reassuring. "Sounds good." We both got in our cars and she led the way, but as soon as we got near the ramp, I slammed my foot on the accelerator, swerving the car onto the southbound ramp instead. I wasn't being controlled anymore. It was a small victory, but it confirmed what I suspected. For the next 5 days, I stayed on the move, staying far from my usual spots, circling a national park, contemplating whether to disappear or confront this nightmare head-on. Eventually, I decided on the latter. Now, 2 hours from my grandmother's estate, I'm making an important stop. If everything goes according to plan, I'll post again soon. If not, this may be my last post. Either way, thank you for being here with me. Below are the last 2 mining logs I was about to include in my last post before I was interrupted. They become essential, providing answers I didn't fully understand before. They offer a manual, a guide to understanding what's happening with Camila, and maybe, just maybe, how I can set her free. Stay tuned. Jack. I still don't know if I should tell anyone about that night. Who would believe me anyway? But maybe if I write it down, I'll start to make sense of it. It started as a normal evening. 5 of us gathered at Olivia's place for dinner. Her old Victorian house was the perfect spot for cozy get-togethers. The wood floors creaked just enough to feel charming, and the dim lighting from antique lamps gave the whole place a warm, amber glow. Olivia was a fantastic cook, so when she invited us over, I didn't hesitate. When I arrived, the others were already there. Mark, Julia, and Emma. The table was set beautifully. Heavy silverware, fine china, candles flickering in the center. Olivia had clearly gone all out. We laughed and caught up as we waited for dinner to finish cooking. The smell of roast chicken and garlic filled the air, mixing with the faint scent of burning wax. But something felt off. At first, I thought I was just imagining it. The way the shadows from the candles seemed a little too long. The way the floor creaked behind me, even though no one was there. I chalked it up to my own nerves. I'd had a stressful week at work. Then Olivia brought out the food. Everything looked delicious, and the wine was flowing. We were in the middle of talking about some vacation Julia had planned when I noticed it. The chicken on my plate, it didn't look right. I couldn't put my finger on why. It wasn't undercooked or spoiled, but it shimmered faintly under the light, like there was something alive under the skin. "You okay?" Olivia asked, her eyes boring into me. I realized I'd been staring at my plate for too long. "Yeah," I said quickly, forcing a laugh. "Just zoned out." But as I picked up my fork and knife, the strangest thing happened. I swear I saw the chicken twitch. Not a lot, just a small shudder, like it was trying to move. I froze, staring at it, my breath caught in my throat. "What's wrong?" Mark asked. Everyone was looking at me now. "Nothing," I lied, trying to shake it off. Maybe I was just overtired. I took a small bite, just to prove to myself I was imagining things. The taste was fine, but there was something else, a faint metallic tang, almost like blood. I pushed my plate away. "You're not eating," Olivia said, her voice sharp. "I'm just not very hungry," I said, avoiding her eyes. The room suddenly felt too warm, the air thick and heavy. Olivia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I worked hard on this meal, you know." "I know. It's great. The lights flickered, cutting me off. For a second, everything plunged into darkness. When the lights came back, I swear the dining room had changed. The shadows on the walls were deeper, darker, and they seemed to ripple like they were alive. The air felt colder now, and I could see my breath fogging up in front of me. Everyone else acted like nothing had happened. Julia was laughing at something Mark had said, and Olivia kept sipping her wine, her eyes fixed on me. Then I noticed Emma. She hadn't said a word in a while, and when I glanced over at her, I realized why. She was staring straight ahead, her face blank, her eyes wide and unblinking. Her hand gripped her fork so tightly that her knuckles were white. "Emma," I whispered. She didn't respond. She just kept staring, her mouth slightly open. I followed her gaze and realized she wasn't looking at anything in particular, just the wall behind Olivia. But when I turned to look, all I saw was the old wallpaper peeling slightly at the edges. "Emma, are you okay?" Julia asked, her voice tinged with concern. Emma blinked, snapping out of it. She shook her head as if clearing a fog. "Yeah, I'm fine, just zoned out." But she wasn't fine. None of us were. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. The wine tasted bitter, the candles burned lower, and the shadows in the room seemed to crawl closer. I kept glancing at the others, trying to gauge if they were feeling it too, but no one said anything. Olivia, especially, seemed perfectly calm. Too calm. By the time dessert was served, I couldn't take it anymore. Tension in the room was suffocating. I pushed my chair back and stood up. "I think I should head out," I said, trying to sound casual. "Already?" Olivia said, her voice sweet, but with an edge that made my stomach twist. "Yeah, early morning tomorrow," I mumbled, grabbing my coat. No one protested. In fact, they barely acknowledged me as I left. The cold night air hit me like a slap when I stepped outside and I breathed deeply, trying to clear my head. I walked to my car and climbed in, gripping the steering wheel tightly. As I pulled away, I glanced back at the house. Olivia was standing at the window, watching me. But it wasn't her face that I saw. It was her smile, wide, too wide, stretching unnaturally across her face. Her teeth were sharp, glinting in the faint light. I drove faster, not looking back again. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Olivia's face, her smile, the way the shadows in her house had seemed alive. I haven't spoken to any of them since. I'm too afraid of what they might say, or what they might not. But every now and then when I'm alone in my apartment, I hear it, a faint creak like someone walking across a wooden floor, and I can't help but wonder if I ever really left Olivia's house, or if some part of me stayed behind. I sat in bed next to my sleeping wife, tucked in and feeling cozy with life. I closed my eyes, but a thought crept in. Her mortified face. What a grin that would be. As she snored softly, I tapped her shoulder, but to my dismay, she didn't wake up. This will ruin my prank, I thought with dread, so I dropped the tissue box near her head. To her shock, she woke up, jolted, and turned toward me, her wide eyes staring at me in disbelief. I grinned, waiting for her reaction. She screamed in terror, and I laughed so hard I could barely stop. "You're an idiot, my heart almost stopped," she said, her voice trembling, but I kept laughing without a care. "You should have seen your face," I said, laughing with tears of joy. The next night, I decided to try again. She fell asleep, and I sat down to plan my prank. This time, I gently nudged her with my elbow and prepared to scare her with my fright mask. It worked again. She looked startled, but there was no scream, just a heavy silence filled with fear. I chuckled quietly, but something about her face seemed different. Did she miss my creepy grin, or was she getting annoyed with my pranks? I decided to stop and went to sleep. But in the morning, she wasn't there. Her absence pulled me from sleep. I found her pacing, phone in hand, her voice trembling, as she whispered, "Mom, I'm scared. I think he's possessed. I don't know." She paced again, her voice growing weak. "Please, I can't." There was a click and her mom had hung up. She collapsed onto the floor, her body going limp. I stood in shock but kept quiet. She looked at me as though something was wrong with me. That night, I swore I'd try one last time. A prank so bold, it felt perfect. I lay in wait under the sheets, ready to give her a fright she couldn't shake. We went to bed and I pretended to sleep, hoping to ease her worries. I knew she'd get up to use the bathroom, so I planned to reveal my terrifying face from under the covers. Hours passed, the moment drawing near. She shifted in bed. I seized the moment. I quickly rose, ready to activate my horrific face. But to my horror, she didn't react as I expected. Instead, her face met mine with a twisted mask, a grotesque design. Her smile was wide, her lips thin, as if her face was tearing from the inside. I weakly chuckled, "What is this?" But her gaze stayed steady, cold, doll-like. "Marie?" I asked, my heart tightening. "Marie," she whispered in the dead of night. Her voice sounded like mine, yet something was off. My stomach twisted in fear. "What is your name?" she asked, her voice echoing, cold as a bell. My throat went dry. My words came slowly. "What are you playing at?" I asked in a low voice. Her smile remained, her lips unmoving, as if her face no longer approved. "So you're the husband," she softly spoke. "Shame. I thought you were." Her voice trailed off. Then came a low, cruel laugh, a sound that rumbled from deep within her. I panicked, falling from the bed, and looked back at her borrowed face. Her gaze locked onto mine, full of hatred. This was not my wife. Her rigid mask replaced the woman I loved. I ran, though my legs felt like stone. She grabbed my ankle with an unknown, unbreakable grip. I kicked her off and managed to break free, but her presence lingered. It wasn't safe, but one thing was clear. My prank had turned against me, and now I had to pay the price. Have you ever experienced similar nightmares? Share your stories in the comments.